Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Cam.
Good morning.
How you feeling this morning, brother?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. You look like you
Good,
just
good.
got up. You had a rough night last night or what?
Just low on sleep.
Low on sleep.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, for low on sleep, you're still looking good, buddy. Still looking good.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
So I can see you and I see Alex. Good morning, Alex. How are you this morning?
I'm good.
I'm in about the same spot as Cam.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're lacking sleep a little bit as well.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have Alex during all of my classes going forward. I think I'm going to have him do the class because I love his accent is the best. I'm jealous of your accent, buddy. It's funny, you go around the country and people ask me where I'm from, and I'm like, Delaware. First of all, they don't know where Delaware is. I always tell them it's outside of Philly. And then they talk about my accent.
Well, there you go.
I have an accent? What are you talking about? And they're like, no, you definitely have an accent from Delaware. So, I don't think I do, but. So I'm seeing a lot of black screens. So if you all can hear me, if you can, would prefer if you turned on your camera so that we can see your lovely morning faces this morning. Of course, if you can, you can't, but if you can, it would be really good to do that. So, so I've got a bunch of announcements that we're going to go over together, but I just want you guys to be aware. We're gonna cover chapter 3 a little bit this morning, so we're gonna go through chapter 3 so that we're ready for next week. Because next week we have our first exam. I will actually probably be posting your exam probably on Friday morning. So I will make it available to you on Friday morning. And so all you need to do is take that exam. You're gonna have a little over a week to work on it. My exams are very interactive, but they are all essay based. You know, I've tried to do, first of all, it's funny because I used to do some objective exams when I first started teaching 11 years ago. And you all don't do very good on objective exams. So I find that especially my entrepreneur students, you guys are very creative and you're very vocal. And so usually if it's more of an essay type of exam, you'll eventually get to the right answer if you start thinking it through and start talking it through a little bit. So typically, historically, students have done much better on those types of exams. Of course, you have 9, almost 10 days to work on it. So you got plenty of time to work on it. My exams tend to be interactive. So I usually will have at least one question or two sometimes that will actually have you click on and watch a YouTube video and then comment about that. So, it's going to have a little bit of that. It's also going to have, and please, listen to this, guys, really important. It is going to have case questions in the book. So you definitely need to have the book. All right. So if any of you guys are trying to skirt through in this course, not having the book, this is going to catch you. Because we do work on case questions. I think case questions are better than having you just look something up and define it. I think that's boring, and I really don't think you learn all that much from it. But if you read case questions or watch videos and things, and then articulate those answers in your own words, that shows me that you really do understand it. And really, that's what's most important. Going to school is not about your grades. It's really about, are you learning things that you're really going to be able to apply to real life? That's at least my approach. I want you to be able to take what you're reading and some of the concepts that you're reading and say, well, how am I going to apply that to the real world? And so, I know there are some subjects out there you're like, I don't think I'm ever going to use that. The subjects that I'm teaching, I feel like as a guy who personally was an entrepreneur for a long time, can tell you, I'm not going to teach you stuff that you're not going to use. So the stuff that you're learning here in our program are things that you're definitely going to apply to whether you're working for yourself or working for someone else. You're going to use these kinds of skills. Okay, so that's going to be coming out next week, and I'll pull up the course page in a minute and show you those announcements as well. But look for that probably on Friday. I wanted to start out the meeting today, and just for a short time, I really wanted to open it up to any questions that any of you guys are having. And I don't mean questions just related to the course, But again, for a lot of you guys that are entrepreneur majors, I'm also your advisor. I'm not going to have every answer for you, but I might be able to answer any questions. But now that we're about a month into our program and coming up on almost 4 weeks into the course as well, you might have questions or comments or concerns related to this or other courses that you're taking or registration or things like that. I'd be happy to answer them. So if you have any questions, just unmute and go ahead and ask away, and I'll do my best to answer. Nothing? You guys are that good, huh? No, Morgan, got anything? Everything's going well? So how are classes going for you guys right now? With COVID and all that, how are you guys handling it? Are you staying on top of your assignments?
For the most
Yeah.
part.
So far.
So far,
Yeah, I
so
think so.
good. So are you getting a little more used to this format, or is this still like, I'd rather be in class? What are your thoughts?
I say probably rather be in class.
I think I'd rather be in class, but I don't think that's necessarily the issue for me. It's more just trying to find motivation to do homework while
Right.
at home
That's
at
really
all
hard.
times.
Yeah, I feel that a lot.
I can work with the online classes. It's just the work outside of classes. It's probably the worst for me.
Yeah, and that is a skill that you have to develop over time. I mean, it's not something that comes naturally to most of us. One of the things that I did, listen, I've been married for a long time, so I've been married a lot longer than you guys have been alive. And my wife is awesome. My wife and I, we met, she was 16, I was 17. So we've been together for a long, long time. And one of the things that my wife has always been really, really good at is she is a lister. So when she's got things to do, she'll have a to-do list and she'll make a list up of things to do. And I'd be like, I don't need that. I don't need that. And then I realized that, that might not be a bad strategy for me. So actually I don't have one sitting on my desk right now because I'm feeling like I got things under control at the moment. But look, Morgan's got one, right? So there you go, right? For me, that's what I do. When I was taking some online classes, one of the things that we do as instructors is we take courses as well. So I took, let me see, I took about 7 or 8 courses to learn how to, to polish my teaching skills. We had to take courses, they're graduate level courses, and they were strictly online. And what I would do is when the instructor would put out assignments for the week, so like when you guys get on my course page, you look at the weekly modules, and I break it down by here's the videos for this week. The next thing is here's the assignments. I would actually, in my courses, I would print them and I'd put them on my desk and I'd cross them out when I got them done. And that was for me, that was a really good strategy to make sure I was staying on top of stuff. I'm also one of those guys that, for me, like, I want to get things off of my plate as quickly as I can, particularly when I get students that will email me with a concern about something or you have a concern. You guys know, some of you guys have already emailed me and I respond really quickly. And that's because I want to solve your problem as quickly as I can because I know it creates a lot of stress for you. But also, I'll be honest with you, that's on my checklist. Okay, answer Alex's issue. Or Cam contacted me, let me contact Cam back. So I will actually list those kinds of things and cross them off. So at the end of the day, I'm like, wow, look what I got done today. So there's some good strategies that you guys can use. But that, Alex, that is a very common challenge. But fight through it because, for you guys, you got to keep your eye on the big prize. And the big prize is completing your degree and advancing your careers. And so, this is not like high school, which is, I mean that in a really good way. This is stuff that you're really going to use and really going to apply. And so, keep your eye on that big prize, and that'll help you get through the little challenges that you have each week. So when we look at, does anybody else have any questions or concerns? Anna's just smiling. Okay, no, everything's going well for you, Anna?
Yeah, I'm good. It's the same thing as like Alex has,
Good.
just
Yeah.
keeping up with it all.
Are you all working now?
I'm not currently, no.
Not working at the moment. Alex, you are working? Okay, so that's hard too when you're working, trying to balance all of that. But, you know, so it is hard. How many courses are you taking, Anna?
I'm taking 5.
You're taking 5?
Yeah, my advisor wanted me to
So
take
how do you,
6.
so give Alex some advice on how you are staying on top of your assignments.
Well, as you see here, I have my list. Of
Another
course.
closet lister.
Yeah, and I crossed out some of the things that I've done. I write down what time I have my classes on the days that I have them. I also put in my my phone calendar because I'm on my phone a lot, so I just put in my phone calendar like
Good.
today you're going to be doing this and this is due this time. And I normally do the things that are due earlier in the week earlier, obviously.
Right.
Like I have something due tomorrow that I already did. But most of my things are due Sunday, so I have enough time to get it done.
You know, I think ultimately that's some great strategies. I think ultimately this is going to make all of you guys even better students than the ones that went before you, because you guys are learning right now how to self-regulate, right, and how to be self-controlled to be able to stay on top of things. So once we go back to normal, whatever that is going to look like, you guys are going to be much more on top of assignments than others were. I really believe that. So
Yeah.
I'm a forever optimist, and as an entrepreneur, we need to be optimistic. So when we go through difficult times like this, I always look at it as an opportunity as well. So opportunities to learn and to grow. So, keep up the good work. And again, if you have any issues, even beyond this, I might have an answer for you. Don't hesitate to reach out to Uncle Dave. I'm happy to answer those questions for you and try to direct you at least on how to, solve some issues that you may be having. We will be talking about registration actually soon in October. We start to get you guys prepared for the registration process for the spring. Of course, we do not know what the spring semester is going to look like at this point, but we will start registering in the beginning of November for courses in spring. So I will actually take a little bit of a class session and go over the sequence sheets for you guys so you kind of know what's next for a lot of you. Okay, so we will help answer some of those questions for you. And then I can guide you a little bit through the registration process again when we get closer to the spring. Again, let's hope, I'm hoping that we get back to somewhat normal in the spring. Although I'm getting more used to using Zoom and doing some of this, it's still not the same. I would love to be in the same room as you guys and just really getting to know you guys and having some laughs and and I think you kind of lose a little bit of that with doing Zoom, but we're making the best of it, right? So again, if you have any questions or concerns, don't feel free to reach out to me. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. So I'm going to move you to my other screen. Then I'm going to share it, and we're going to pull up our course. Okay, so you see the course page. Can everybody see the course page now? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So again, to remind you guys, again, I keep reminding you guys, okay, we have our homework 1 is due this week. So make sure that you've done that. I know a lot of you guys have handed in the assignment already. Great job. If you've done that already, fantastic. If you're not, put it on your list. Okay, it should be on your list at this point. But our homework 1 is due by Sunday night at midnight. Again, here's the link to the assignment, and here's a link to the submission folder where you can just take it and submit it. Again, if you're having any problems with that, feel free to email it to me if that works better for you. So you can email it to me, just say homework number 1, okay? Our Zoom meetings are just like we're doing now, but I will tell you, very, very important announcement. We will not have Zoom meeting next week. Okay, so we're not going to meet next week because you guys are working on your exam next week. Okay, so I will not take up time from your schedules to have a Zoom meeting. You are going to start reading chapter 4 a little bit next week, but your main focus next week is going to be working on the exam, which is chapters 1 through 3. Okay, so, and I will announce this as well. I'll put it out again. No Zoom meeting next week, and then we'll resume it the following week. Again, I'll continue to post those announcements and update them as we go. So we go to our content, we're back in our learning modules. We're already working our way down a little bit. So here we are in module number 3. Of course, last week we watched our little buddy Kane. By the way, if you do any follow-up, you can get on YouTube and you can type in Kane and Kane's Arcade, and there are subsequent videos. Kane is now a full-fledged adult, and there's actually some follow-up. There was actually a global initiative for entrepreneurship for children that Kane's Arcade actually got started. And it was basically a movement to send out cardboard boxes to millions of children all over the world and asking them to build something unique or unusual. And all these kids were working on, so watch Kane's Arcade 2 on YouTube for a little bit of fun on seeing how Kane took that and made it even a more interesting thing for other kids as well. So here's our module 3. Again, the homework again is listed here if you need it. Again, due by midnight, and our exam 1, that's working on that next week, okay? Any questions about what is due for next week or any of the assignments that we've just covered? Okay, so I'm going to open up chapter 3, and we got to cover chapter 3 because we've got a exam that's going to include chapter 3. So let me pull that up, guys. If you have your textbook, which you should, I encourage you to open it to chapter 3, page 56, and the PowerPoints will kind of coincide with a little bit about what we're talking about in chapter 3. So we spent a little bit of time defining what an entrepreneur is in chapter 1. And again, you guys jump in and ask a question whenever you need to ask a question. So don't hesitate to interrupt me. I'm not offended by that in the least bit. So we spent the first chapter talking about really what an entrepreneur is. And, you know, again, somebody who is a risk taker, but a calculated risk taker, you know, somebody who sees opportunity and uses the resources that they have in order to obtain or get an objective or reach a goal to meet a need or fill a want of a customer. The second chapter was a little bit more focused on the entrepreneurial mindset. Like, what kind of a person is an entrepreneur? What kind of a mindset do we have? And chapter 3 is really talking about new entries. So if you look on page 56, we talk about, and I'm going to go through these slides, and this, again, this won't take too long for us for this class. So hopefully we'll even be done before an hour. So if you just hang in there with me. So a new entry, again, is new business, a new invention, a new business, something that's new to the marketplace. So it says new entry is one of the essential acts of entrepreneurship. We're always looking for something that's new, and newness can be good or bad. So we know that there's, for every product or every idea or service that comes out as a new entry that is successful, there's tons of them that are not successful. My argument is sometimes it's not the design of the product or the service, it's the execution of the business, which is why I teach this. Because what I'm trying to do is not change your ideas of what you may want to do in the future, but to be able to guide you from a business standpoint to help give you the best chance for success for your business idea. The entrepreneurial strategy maximizes benefits of newness and minimizes costs. So, you know, we're looking for generation of new opportunities. How do we exploit that opportunity? And then what kind of feedback do we get from our customers in regards to how successful we are on reaching them? If the new entry is exploited, performance depends on our strategy. You know, what's the strategy in which we introduce something new? I remember, and this is predates you guys, so I remember when the first MP3 came out. What's an MP3? Give me an example. Anybody remember some of the original MP3s?
It has to do with music, right?
Right. Have you ever heard of an iPod?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, remember that?
I just didn't want to be
iPod,
wrong. I had a feeling that was right.
iPod. So, you know, here's the crazy thing, right? Apple was not the ones who invented MP3. Okay, it was Microsoft and some of the earlier companies actually come up with MP3s. They tried to launch them. they really didn't catch on. And I got to be honest, man, I was a guy. Listen, I grew up in the record and the I moved to CDs and listening to CDs for music. So when people were talking about, I got to tell you, when I heard about MP3 the first time, I was like, what in the world is an MP3? I had no idea what that was. And that is always the danger with new entry, is when you have a new entry product or a new entry kind of service, there's a little bit of a lag, because there has to be a period of time in which you as the entrepreneur are actually teaching people what it is that you're doing and how it works and why they might need it. So I was perfectly happy with my CDs. I mean, I could get out of the basement right now and pull out my big box. I got a huge box of CDs. I belong to the BMG club, where you can get like 10 of them for a penny, and then you get a new one every month. I mean, I have, you name it, I've got it. So if you want to collect CDs, call Uncle Dave. I'd be glad to donate them to you. Don't ever listen to them anymore. I don't even have a CD player. I guess in my computer I still have one, but I don't ever use one. But you know, that was how I had my music, and that's how we listened to music. MP3 started to change that, but the problem with the new entries were they didn't explain them very well. And Apple is really the ones who came in with the first iPod. I remember they were like about that big, and my kids had them, the Nanos and things, and they were listening to music on that thing. And for me, as an old school music listener, it boggled my mind. I really didn't understand how in the world are they listening to music in this little thing. I don't really get it. And so there was definitely a learning curve. And you have people in the marketplace for new entry types of businesses that are what we call early adopters. These are the people, you know, who spent $10,000 for the first flat screen TVs when they came out. And it wasn't because the TVs were very good. It was because they wanted to be first to have one. And I remember when flat screens came out, I mean, they were like 10, 12 grand. So if you got one, you were super cool and rich, even though the picture kind of sucked. So, you know, those are those early adopters. Those are the ones that really adopt the new technology, and they want to be first. These are the ones who, when something technology, particularly Apple, when it comes out something new, they're the ones who are pitching tents, you know, outside of Best Buy, so that they can be the first ones to buy, you know, the new iPhone. Which is, you know, if they waited 2 more weeks, they can just walk in and buy one. But they want to be first. And there's something about that motivation, and new entry types of businesses really exploit those kinds of people. The new entry also, again, just like anything else, we're trying to reduce our risk. So we want to minimize risk as much as we can. We want to stay organized. And it really does, early entries and new entries really are dependent on your competence as a team. If it's a team of you, or of you as the entrepreneur, it really depends on your ability to be competent at launching the business and following through with it. So we look at, and again, we're on page 57 now, the generation of a new entry opportunity. Resources are really, really important for every entrepreneur, but particularly for new entries, for new businesses or new concepts that are coming out. So it says resources are the building blocks combined in various ways to achieve superior performance. So a good entrepreneur will take resources. What kind of resources? What kind of resources do you think we're talking about? Anybody? What are your thoughts? Can you think of resources that we would use in a business? How about you guys? What are you? You're a person, right? So what kind of resource are you? Are you a resource for your business?
Yeah.
What kind of resource? What do we call that? You're actually going to take a course of that at some point. Management 231, I believe, is human resources, right? So we're using human resources. We're using maybe building resources, like, you know, maybe if we're a furniture store, what kind of resources do we need in a furniture store or in a furniture manufacturing company? What are some of the things? Let's say you're going to launch a factory to build furniture. What kind of resources do you think you need?
Fabric.
Yep,
Wood
wood.
and other
Absolutely.
hard
You
materials.
gotta have that coming in. What else do you need?
Tools, machinery.
Say again.
Power tool.
What are your thoughts? What you need people, right? So you have people doing it. What else do you need? If you're gonna run a
Tools.
factory, what?
The tools to make the furniture.
Tools. So we need machinery, right? Exactly, right? We need. What do the machines run on?
Electricity.
What's that?
Electricity.
Right? So we need power. So that's a resource, right? So we've got to think about, if you think about resources, you can go back in time and see resources. Have any of you guys ever been to Hagley Museum in Wilmington? You guys should go sometime. So Hagley Museum in Wilmington was the old factory from DuPont where they produced gunpowder. And it was very important because in the late 1700s during our revolution, if we didn't have the DuPonts making gunpowder, we had no army to fight the British. And the British were in the area, Brandywine and all that, were looking for that factory, trying to shut it down, but they never did find it. Hagley Museum is very interesting because that factory was sitting right on the Brandywine River. And the Brandywine River was a huge resource for the factory because all of the machinery ran on water power. So you can go there and you can walk into one of the old factories and you can see the big water wheel turning and generating energy for those machines to be able to work to produce the gunpowder. And so, we're always locating our business and thinking about what are the resources that I have available to me and how can I exploit them to meet the demand of my customers. And that's really what new entries do. So you look back on your slide here, we combine our resources in different ways. So it allows, our resources will allow us to pursue opportunities. We're also using resources to neutralize threats because every business has threats. And we use it to offer products and services to our customers. One of the great things about new entry is that we don't have a lot of competitors. So we have an edge over them because we have maybe resources that they don't have. It's not easy to replicate either. It takes time and it can be very costly for other companies to replicate. Here's some other things about resources that we're talking about. If you flip in through your book, we're on page 58 now at the very bottom. One of the things the book talks about is entrepreneurial resource. So it says the basis for entrepreneurial resource is knowledge. That's your knowledge built over time through your experience, through idiosyncratic, which is learning hands-on or even in school, like what you're doing now. And so the things that you bring to the table is considered entrepreneurial research. So some of you guys might be thinking at some point to going into a business of something or similar to something that you've already been working in. If you've worked in a restaurant for a period of time, you kind of learn what works and what doesn't work. That makes you much better and much more able to be able to start up and be successful at a restaurant than somebody like me who's really never worked at a restaurant. So that is that entrepreneurial resource that the businesses need to tap in, and that's what you bring to the table as well. Now we're on page 60. So now when we're looking at new entries and we're thinking about launching something new, we've got to assess the attractiveness of that new entry opportunity. So how attractive is it? So here's some things the book talks about in much more detail, but I'm going to give you the overview and then you guys can read this chapter and get ready for next week's exam that talk about, whether this idea that you have is worth doing as a new entry, right? So we need to determine if the product, is it valuable? we only assess value based on how much people are willing to part with money in order to get it, right? So my second year students right now are starting to write their business model, and they do a thing, and you guys are going to learn a little bit about this. We're going to talk about a little bit of it after the exam, is what we call value proposition. And value proposition means that how much money are potential customers willing to give you in order to get the service or to get the product or the combination of the two from you. And that's really all about how we assess value. You know, so what's one of the most valuable resources that we pull out of the ground worldwide? What are the most expensive things?
Oil.
What's that?
Then oil.
Oil is one. Yep. What else? You might have some wearing around your neck.
Diamonds.
Diamonds. Yep. And
Gold.
that's on a setting of what? What other raw material do we value?
Gold.
Gold. Have you ever watched any of these people that are digging for gold? I think in Alaska and things. They have TV shows about them, Bering Sea gold, and you see how much dirt they've got to pull up to get just a little bit of gold. So the value of things go up when things are rare. So notice that, and I'm using my clicker here. Notice that they include rare. So the more rare, and how the rareness of even finding imitations or replacements are, that's the value. So the value goes up the more rare things are. So to assess the attractiveness of a new opportunity, we collect information. So information is power. We also have to look at a window of opportunity. You know, is this the right time? Sometimes it's all a matter of timing. MP3 player, when it first came out, was actually launched. I think it was Microsoft released the first one, and it was actually called the Zune, Z-U-N-E, and their sales were not good at all. Apple is the one that came in and started to make it more mainstream. They started to, I don't know if you remember, they used to have commercials. What was interesting about the iPod, their headphones, if you remember, were always, and Apple still does this, their headphones are what color?
White.
They're white, which was opposite of everything that was out there. So any of the headphones and things were always black. And Apple came out with white ones. They used to have a commercial where they just had a silhouette of a person dancing, and all you could see was the white headphones jumping around while they're listening to their iPod. And that was trying to set them apart from, like, well, we get that you know a little bit about MP3. Now we're going to show you what an iPod is and show you why you really need that. So that window of opportunity when the MP3 first came out, it just wasn't quite the right time. Everybody was still buying CDs. And Apple waited just a little bit. And then when they got in the market, they saw that the window was right. And they sold gazillions of them. And I believe they still sell iPods, don't they? Do they still sell iPods?
I don't know.
Anybody? You guys?
I don't think so. I thought they were obsolete.
I
But
thought they still, I
might
thought
not
they
be.
reintroduced the Nano just a few years ago. Again, they brought it back out. I don't know, but
I don't
I
know how
had
they
one of the bigger iPods with the little screen on it, which I thought was really cool at the time. So I was an early adopter. I spent a fortune for that thing. I still have it, but I never used it. So the next page we talk about, again, first mover entry strategy. So a first mover, again, is the one who sees the window of opportunity, a new market or a new product. And so they're the ones who are moving first into the market. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's not. So first movers, so what are some of the things related to being the first mover? First movers develop a cost advantage because they're first. They get access to resources. So sometimes the costs are a little bit less. They obviously have less competition because you might be the first or only one out there. First movers can secure important suppliers, a channel of distribution, which means how do we get the product or service to the customer? First movers are better positioned to satisfy customers because they were the first. So people will look and say, well, they're the original. So, I think I'm going to go with the original, not some cheap imitation. First movers gain expertise through participation. So they get more expertise because they've been out there longer than the competition once the competition gets in the game. But they don't always prosper. Sometimes, like the MP3 player, the second generation group comes in and does it better. And that's exactly what Apple did. They were the ones that came in and said, we're going to take this MP3 technology, we're not going to reinvent it, but we're going to rebrand it and we're going to remarket it. And we're going to add some new bells and whistles to it that are going to get people to adopt it. So they're really the ones that hit it, not the ones who actually first produced the MP3 player. First mover advantages must outweigh the disadvantages. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm always a cost versus benefit when I have a big decision to make. So I'm kind of looking and like, okay, I've got this really big decision to make. So what's the cost of this and what is the benefit if it's successful? And if I've got the cost significantly outweighing the benefit, I don't move on that idea. And that's really what first movers need to do on as well. So they look at the environment, and we're not talking about trees and water and sea. We're talking about the commercial environment. How stable is the economy? Is an important thing. We're actually quickly closing in on holiday season. I can't believe we're even saying that already. And it really starts before Halloween now. Somehow Halloween became a really big holiday, which is great. I love candy just like everybody else. But what you're going to see a lot when we get closer and closer to the Christmas season is you're going to start seeing the news media going out to people who are shopping, and we'll be asking them, are you going to spend more money, less money, or the same as last year? And they're trying to get a gauge on, from an economic standpoint, how to forecast how well the economy is going to go this coming year. I really don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how the holidays develop depending on what COVID's doing. And depending on election. I don't know if you noticed it, but we do have a presidential election coming up in November. I don't know if you saw all the ads, but we do have one coming. So all of those factors play on the economy, and that's really what we're talking about by the environmental stability. The other thing is how well can you educate your customers? And then the ability to erect barriers is a really important thing. So, how can you prevent the competition from getting into the market and beating you out? So there are things that you can do that can kind of be a defense against the competition. If you go to the next page, we're looking on page, as you're following me here, page 64, and you should be following this highlight in your book if you can. So it talks a little bit more about that environmental stability. And I don't need to go over that, in more detail, but, is it a good fit? Are you a good fit? So does your experiences and your entrepreneurial experience, does that fit well with this particular market that you're getting involved in? And it does talk about the fact that entrepreneurs face demand and technological uncertainty. No matter how hard we work, guys, to reduce our risk, we're still going to have some risk. And the newer technology and the newer to the market that your product or service is, unfortunately, the more risk that you take. But just like in gambling, the higher the risk, the more the payoff if you score. So, if you're not going to take a big risk, you can still get a payoff, but it's not going to be as great as if you take more of a risk. So, you have to kind of evaluate that. Are you really in the position to be able to launch, something new and a new entry into the marketplace? Going on to page 66, and we're winding this down very quickly here. So again, we talk about your uncertainty, but we also have to talk about the uncertainty to the customers. So your customers, they're uncertain. Should I put money into this, this new technology? Is this really something that I need? So there's an element of newness that means an uncertainty for customers. So they might be uncertain about how to use the product or its overall benefits of it. Do I really need this? I don't even know how it works. So there's a learning curve. And you guys as entrepreneurs, if you're launching something that's a new entry into the marketplace, you're going to have to account for that, which means your sales are going to lag for a period of time until people understand it and adopt it and start realizing that they actually need it or want it. So there's a big learning curve in that. And some of you guys, like, you'll jump in a new technology, you'll jump in it like that. But I bet you there's a lot of you guys that don't buy it right away. They kind of wait for the first adopters, those early adopters, to try it. And then if they kind of like it, then maybe I'll buy it when the price comes down just a little bit. And all of us are that way. You guys are learning how to navigate on D2L. As a college, as faculty, we used Blackboard for many years was our format. And then we switched to D2L about 2 years ago. There was a big learning curve with that. There's a lot of pushback. People didn't want to change because people don't really like change. And so, you know, there's a pushback on that. Well, why do we need that? And it took time for us to really learn how to use, you know, that technology. So how do you reduce that that uncertainty that the customers have? You offer informational advertising. And so you're out there teaching people how to use it and why it's important to use that. You can get advantages. Again, it says at the very bottom, education directs customer preference to the firm's products. So if you're out there educating about how to use the product like Apple did with the iPod, then people end up buying it. So the iPod outsold all the MP3 players that were out there in the time because they took time to show the advantages, you know, and why people would need that. So they were the ones that did the informational sessions that really gave them an advantage. On the next page, page 68, it talks about lead time and first mover disadvantages and advantages. So again, entry barriers provide a grace period of limited competition. So if you're coming out with something brand new, there's a grace period where others haven't caught up to you at this point. The competition hasn't caught up to you. So there's time where you can really take advantage of that time where there's not a lot of competition and really jump and control the market. So there's great opportunities for that. And the first mover can extend lead time by using, these are some of the barriers to entry. Barriers to entry mean it keeps the competition from getting in the business against you. You build customer loyalty. You know, customer loyalty goes a long way. There are people out there that say, I will only buy Chevys. I only like Chevys. I don't like Fords. And then there's other people say, I like Fords, or I like Nissans, or I like Lexus. And they're committed to that brand loyalty. And we don't know exactly why people do that. But there is a brand loyalty that you can build. Apple certainly has done that. You know, Apple makes lots of different products. They have a brand loyalty, and there are Apple people out there that only buy Apple and they don't like to buy other equipment. Even though other equipment could be quite a bit cheaper, they still buy Apple. You know, it can cost people money to switch brands, so it's cheaper for them to stay. Again, I like to use Apple as an example. So Apple comes out with products that interface with products maybe you already own. So in case you didn't notice, you can't just plug average headphones into your iPhone. You have to have a special adapter, or you got to buy special earplugs that fit just with the Apple product, so that it's too expensive to switch. So people, once they make a commitment to Apple or an iPhone, they're buying products that interface with iPhone only, but don't necessarily interface with Android. You can protect your uniqueness of your product. You know, there are certain unique features about your product that set you aside from potential competition. And you can secure access to important sources of supply and distribution. So you can have exclusive offerings, like we will only sell Apple products. Or like Apple did, they opened up their own store. I know in the mall there's a Microsoft store as well. I don't know if anybody goes in that. It seems like the few times I go to the mall, it doesn't seem that busy, but the Apple store is always crowded. So there's a definite brand loyalty that really fits in with Apple, and Apple has really done a good job of cornering that market. To finish up this chapter on page 71, the book talks about, again, risk reduction. So listen, when we're putting something new out there, it's a little more risky than established markets. So we've got to make some choices. We've got to evaluate, and the book talks about that. So the choice of market scope ranges from narrow to broad scope strategy, depending on the risk targeted for reduction. That's really fancy words of just saying the scope or size of the market. So we can be a very exclusive and very narrow market, but we can really market to a very small but very exclusive group, or we can have a very broad scope. I'll give you a great example of that. So a very broad scope strategy would be a brand new Chevy product that comes out. So Chevy comes out with a new SUV, and they're talking about all the specialties that that SUV provides. And there's a lot of people that can buy, and a lot of people that can afford, a really nice SUV from Chevy. A very narrow scope or narrow market is Ferrari. Not everybody can afford a Ferrari, and so their sales volume per year is so much lower than Chevy. It's almost non-existent. Chevy could never survive with only selling, a few units a year like Ferrari can. But Ferrari charges, $500,000 to $1 million for a new car. So they don't need to sell, thousands of cars at $30,000, per unit. They can sell one unit for $1 million. So they have a very narrow range. Actually, it's funny. I believe it is Ferrari. There's a Ferrari dealership in, I think, New Jersey. And if you want to come to their dealership and you want to take a look at the Ferrari, you have to make an appointment. And then you have to disclose to them information, and they do a check to see if you are credit worthy enough to afford a Ferrari. So they would never have guys like me walk into their store because they know I can't afford a Ferrari. So I'm just in there pretending like I can. So you actually have to show that you have the money to afford one in order to come in and take a look and maybe even test drive one. So that's a very narrow scope, but they make it, and they've made it all these years because they don't need to sell thousands and thousands and thousands of units. They only need to sell maybe hundreds of units at $1 million a piece in order to make it work. And that narrow scope works well for them. So there's an exclusivity of that, right? You drive down the street in a Ferrari, people are going to notice. If you drive down the street in a Chevy, probably not so much, right? So definitely a different in scope. The book goes on, and now we're on page, bottom of page 72. What about imitation? Imitation strategy is another strategy for minimizing risk. So imitation is easier than conducting a systematic and expensive search. In other words, we can just imitate. So how can we just imitate something that's successful? We see that all the time. One of my favorite movies, Eddie Murphy movie from the 1990s was Coming to America, which is where he's an African prince who's looking for his queen in Queens, New York. And he gets a job at a restaurant called McDougal's. And everything about McDougal's was just like McDonald's. And it was kind of a funny thing, but the idea was we can just imitate, because McDonald's was very successful. So let's just imitate what they do. So there's ways in which companies can protect themselves from imitation. And we know that, if a company imitates another successful business, too closely, there's going to be lawsuits that are involved. So we try to reduce that ability of other companies to imitate us. So we create an atmosphere where we have exclusivity to other businesses. And then how do we manage newness? Again, this is the end of the chapter. So we are on the very last page of the chapter. The creation of a new organization offers liabilities of newness. We have to learn new tasks, and that takes time. It's expensive. The role responsibility overlaps, or we have gaps. In other words, we might not have all the expertise we need. So, we're going to have overlap. A lot of times the structure of the business can be a little bit informal, which means it's a little bit loosely done because we've got to stay very agile. I've been talking to my business students and some of my colleagues about, the coronavirus has really challenged businesses to be agile. And the companies, even the older businesses that are not agile, they're not able to move and flex with what the environment is showing, is proving costly to them, and many of them are going out of business. So companies like Neiman Marcus, are really struggling. Tiffany's looks like they were going to get bought, now they're not. So they might be going belly up after 150 years, because these companies have gotten very old and stagnant, and they end up being very rigid. They're not flexible. So they're not flexing with the demand with COVID going on. Restaurants today, the restaurants who have figured out a way in which to deliver their products to customers without opening their restaurants, they're the ones who are going to survive. The ones that don't survive are just not agile enough. So they weren't able to handle the newness of the market. So any company that's launching a new product or a new service has to be agile. They have to be informal in structure. They can't be rigid, because if they're rigid, they're not going to survive. So that's really the end of chapter 3. Again, talking about those new entries. In chapter 4, which we're going to get into week after next, because we will not have a Zoom meeting next week because you're doing your exam, we're going to talk about creativity and the business idea. I love the fact that chapter starts talking about Elon Musk, who is one weird idea dude, but that guy has some really crazy, cool ideas. I watch the launches of SpaceX, and it's pretty phenomenal what this man's doing. So he has really risen to the occasion of being one of, if not the premier entrepreneur of our generation. So it starts out talking about Elon Musk, the Iron Man entrepreneur. So that's in chapter 4, and we'll be talking about creativity and how to build your business idea. It's what I love the most about entrepreneurship and the business technologies is we are the creators. We're the creative ones. So we use that creative side of our brain. So we're not all analytical. We're thinking, I hate to say it, but outside the box. We really are. We're really the creative side of business. So again, the exam, I'm going to take that off my screen. So again, the exam will be chapters 1 through 3. And again, I will make that available to you sometime on Friday. I'm hoping I'm going to be in a Zoom, college-wide Zoom meeting for a little while. So it might not be first thing in the morning, but I'll try to release that on Friday if I can for you. And, just work on it. Here's the thing, right? I will tell you guys, it's a take-home exam, and it is an essay exam. You cannot answer the questions in a sentence or two. So if you've only written a little bit, you need to think deeper, okay? And you need to write deeper. And I don't grade based on a measuring tape. Well, this person had this long of an answer. That's an A, this one's a B, this one's a C. I don't do it that way, but I do know that the questions that I'm asking you, if you're going to answer fully, really require more writing than just a little, all right? So answer it fully and go back and read it again before you submit it. Say, did I really answer the question that he's asking? And did I really support my answer? Did I provide an example maybe that he's asking? Okay, so those are the kinds of things that I want you to do on that exam, okay? Do you have any questions or comments, concerns, or anything about chapter 3 or the exam? Don't forget about homework. 1 is due on Sunday, so let's get that one off your plate. Is there anything else that I can answer for you guys this morning? Anyone who's not showing their beautiful faces on my screen? Any questions?
No, I'm good.
Brianna, you're okay?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. Well, just you guys know you can just shoot me an email. I'll be glad to answer them for you. So again, no Zoom meeting next week. I'll put that out again and look for that exam on Friday. If there's no further questions or comments, thanks for hanging with me, guys. Have a wonderful week. Stay nice and safe, okay? I don't want anybody getting sick. All right?
You
All
too.
right, thank you.
And we will see
Thank
you guys
Thank you.
probably in about
Thank you.
I'll see you in 2 weeks unless you need anything, okay?
Okay.
Gotcha.
All right.
All
Have a
right.
great one, guys. Take
You
care.
too.
You too.